Welcome to the second episode of Gamechangers. Today, we have a very special guest, someone who I've known for many years. He's a very influential and internationally known games executive based in Vietnam. He's the Director of Business Development at VNG, Mr. Chris Liu. Welcome.
Hey, Junde, thank you for inviting me, and thanks to Benny.
Thank you. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself and VNG?
Okay, well, I'll talk a little bit more about VNG since my life has been here for about more than 10 years already. I really decided to join this company in 2010. And the company that time was 6 years old, started out in a supermarket, that time just doing games in Vietnam.
Wow.
Over the past 10 years, we've evolved quite a bit in a very competitive market, and we've been very lucky to now have also Zalo and Zing, which are sort of the biggest chat messaging and music apps in Vietnam. And then on the game side, we've expanded our development and publishing business to now cover Southeast Asia and Taiwan as well. So obviously things are going to get harder, but it's a very exciting industry, and I'm just really, I feel very lucky to be here and be able to work with such great people and learn many things, and of course play many games.
Wow, that sounds like incredible growth for the company over the years, and also incredible journey for yourself.
Yeah, and it's just we're still young, right, Junde?
Depends who you compare with. But we're young in terms of comparing against the mobile industry, the mobile games industry.
Yes, and in our hearts.
Cool. So talking about Gamechangers, talking about VNG, one of the hit titles for you guys has been Dead Target Zombies, which is a first-person shooter game. So that's why I want to today I want to talk a little bit about this subgenre. So this subgenre of first-person shooter is actually one of the top 4 subgenres in the world by game downloads. Okay, it has accumulated 1.55 billion downloads last year with a consumer spend of close to 700 million. And here we chart the growth of the downloads and growth revenue over the last year. So downloads has grown moderately and also spiked during the peak periods of global lockdowns. And revenue has been steadily increasing even across to the end of last year. And here we also look at some of the biggest monetization methods for this subgenre. So you can see that it's mainly concentrated on a few monetization methods such as VIP, gacha, loot boxes, cosmetic items, consumables, and so on. And it's also represented by some of the leading first-person shooter games like Sniper 3D, Call of Duty, Dead Target Zombie, and so on. So Chris, first I want to ask you about your favorite games. You know, you guys have published so many games over the years, from traditional IPs like Crossfire to more oriental themed games from China to casual racing games, as well as, of course, the huge title PUBG. So what is your favorite game amongst all these games you've seen locally and abroad over the years?
All right, let me think about this carefully because it could get me in trouble with our marketing team. We're all allowed to have favorites at some point, right? So I'd have to say I'm not a big PUBG player because I sort of like the team competition a lot. So although I think it's a great game, I'm gonna have to pick Wild Rift because I'm a huge mobile player, and Legends of Runeterra because I also like card battle games. So I think Riot's been very nice to me so far, and also for the fact that some of these games do not cost a lot of spending in order to play for a long time. So that's always a plus.
Well, that's very cool. Shifting to global games, what was the last time you've reacted WoW to a mobile game and why? I mean, games outside of your portfolio.
Right. Well, I'm still waiting for the WoW mobile game, so that will probably wow me when it comes out. But the last WoW game that I have to say would probably be Genshin Impact, and the reason for why it wowed me so much was that it just has such a seamless transition from PC to mobile. In that, you know, when I first tried it on PC, I already liked the game a lot because I think in terms of an online game, I don't think any game has ever given you this freedom of exploration before, right? So if you play Breath of the Wild, you do have freedom of exploration, but it's a single player game. But, you know, Genshin Impact is an online game that lets you just do anything you want and go anywhere you want at your own pace, right? And the fact that, you know, once you go out and you're on a taxi, you can just log in mobile and complete quests and have the exact same experience. That really wowed me, even more so than just graphics and really cool cutscenes.
That's great to hear. It is indeed a very huge production, and I was also quite wowed by their cross-platform marketing campaign during their launch. They were everywhere. They were on TV. They were on the iPad. They were on mobile phones. They were on the web. They were on bus ads as well. That was quite wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's everywhere, and you can't hide from it. So you might as well just give in and try it.
Right, right, right. Okay, so next question. So what is your you have been so we have been working together for quite a few years. Can we understand what some of your main use cases of App Annie data?
Yeah, we started using App Annie, I think, in 2014. I have to say, like, I remember we were one of your really early customers. So, um, there's obviously we use App Annie to spy our competitors. But that wouldn't be the main use. I think the main use would be, say we're going to a new market like Indonesia, and we want to bring a certain game there. We use App Annie to really market sides. How is the performance of similar genres and gameplay, similar IP, similar phone specs, similar other similarities, and how did those games do in terms of downloads and revenue? And that way we can really benchmark sort of our expectations for the game in terms of what's the potential base of the users and potential revenue we can get there. So I think that's for us, that's always for us the foundational use of App Annie, and it's great. We've benchmarked our own games and own data against App Annie's data, and for us, we've already like App Annie has sort of been like it's something that we really can't not use in our research these days. And right now we're really digging a lot into sort of the cross genre and the genre categorization that you guys are doing, and hopefully, I believe that'll become one of the main uses eventually once we figure out how to use it the best.
Yeah, thank you so much for that support. I think gaming has evolved so much from the early days to what it is today, and that's why we also wanted to dive into a lot more granular subgenres to also to dive into what's the makeup of very successful games in terms of the monetization, the what features engage people most, and so on. So
Right.
we look forward to helping you guys a lot more.
Well, we're gonna keep using you guys. So and I really appreciate the fact that App Annie is always trying to better itself and evolve, rather than just sort of stay put at where it is. I really appreciate that.
Well, the industry doesn't stay put, so we shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So next, what do you think is the next big thing in gaming?
So there's always a lot of trends. I've never really been so big on VR, at least in the short term, right? Just because it's not really affordable and doesn't have a lot of good. It's very hard to have sort of high quality production for VR at the moment. But more, I want to link back to what we talked to before, and I think cross-platform is really going to be the trend because right now, like these young generation of gamers are sort of different than us, right? It's sort of in the old school gamers, we love PC, we love console, and we're very strong, have a strong feeling about other forms of entertainment or other places to play games. We feel it's not as elite, as what we consider to be the best, right? But I think the younger generation gamers, they love PC and console too, but they also grew up playing mobile. Everyone's, these kids have played Minecraft or Roblox or, one of the mobile games on their mobile phones as well. So in the future, for them, they're going to play on PC and PlayStation, but they also want to be able to play when they're outside on mobile, on Switch and other platforms as well. So seeing that a games such as Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra, and Genshin Impact have already realized this whole seamless transition between PC and mobile, meaning you're not getting a light version on mobile, you're getting the exact same
Right,
game.
and you play on the same
They've
server as well.
Exactly, same server and you have the same experience, right? So now that they've sort of upped the bar for everyone else, it's like, why can't you do it, right? Why can't you have the same exact experience on all these different platforms? And more companies are going to do that. And then once you're able to have more games on more platforms, then you can even do better marketing because you can spend money on tons of branding activities because you're reaching an even bigger base of users since it's on so many different platforms. So I think that trend, as tech moves up, is going to be really something that we'll see quick and fast, rather than something that's kind of speculative like many other trends are.
Yeah, sounds like we have to expand cross-platform to track data too. And so will VNG be
Yeah.
working? Do you think the Vietnamese market is ready for cross-platform?
Yeah, I think Vietnamese market is really important for that, because, and I don't want to talk about, I want to talk about emerging markets in general. So emerging markets in general, they're mobile first markets, right? So most people did not have the luxury of buying a console, um, at the time, and even for PC, they're limited, right? Because most families who buy PC are using it for work rather than a personal gaming PC, right? So that's why I think that for Vietnam, having the able to play on mobile is going to be very important. But given that the core base of users anywhere in the world, right, the most hardcore base of users is still PC, right? So if you want to be able to get that core game base of users really involved, I think PC and having that cross platform is going to be important. Whether any market you're in.
Right, right. Especially when you mentioned in all these emerging economies, emerging countries, there's no problem playing mobile games or PUBG already on the mobile. So to be able to play this on console, on PC, that could only be an even better experience.
Right.
Cool. So talking about the Vietnamese industry, I want to jump in over to a question that our previous guest, Mr. Jeff Linden from iDream Sky,
Mm.
he wanted to ask you something about Vietnam. I mean, firstly, there's been some recent changes in the industry, so we want to understand a little bit more. And also, so with this recent changes, what's the trends or that we can expect, and how's the industry reacting to this?
Okay. Okay, well, thanks, Jeff, for the questions. I think I can address both of the questions here about esports and the trends in Vietnam. So I think what a lot of people want to hear about, as well as the regulations part, is that, yeah, I mean, the regulations have gotten a bit more stricter, not just because, of government regulations, but even just following IFRS and other tax regulations as well, too, right? Like Vietnam is really, really growing at a very fast pace, and more the country wants to follow more and more of international regulations as well. At the same time, content that's coming in here also has to be monitored to make sure that there's not any content that really is explicit, or especially so many young gamers are playing these days. So right now, the license, sort of the licensing model, for working with local Vietnamese companies is definitely a trend right now. For global games, you can still work with a local company to get the license there, and then you would basically have the game client be put up on the store from a local company. But then your servers, once they go into the game, they would still lock onto the international servers, right? So it wouldn't put extra workload or pressure on you to do an extra Vietnam version. But the real trend I really want to talk about for Vietnam, other than regulations, is really the trend of developers, right? If you look at across the whole world, right, in emerging markets, very few countries have had so many emerging developers like Vietnam, right? In terms of like Amanodes and Athena and OneSoft and Zika, all these companies with billions of downloads. I remember if you looked at App Annie, like some of the top downloads, top 10 in the world last year had like a couple of Vietnamese companies when Vietnam is still an emerging market. So I
Right.
think we're going to see more and more of that. If you looked at sort of the China developers who are really strong right now, when they first started, when the Koreans were so strong on PC, a lot of Chinese developers started with web games and browser-based games, right, and sort of moved up the chain, and now are making amazing mobile games. So I think for Vietnam, like people are starting with the hyper casual and the casual games to sort of get the base of users, the experience, the capital, and then hopefully move up the chain later. So that's where I really see Vietnam going, a really big trend in terms of development community. People are very focused on that, and there's a lot of schools popping up for kids who want to develop games. Um, and lastly, for the esports trend in Vietnam, I think it's again an emerging market question, because especially emerging markets are all mobile first markets. And when you're a mobile first market and you're doing esports, it's hard to bring that same experience that you're bringing with PC, right? So first of all, like the quality of game tends to be lower, and second of all, you're not using LAN; you have to go on Wi-Fi, right? So in a lot of emerging markets, when we've had these tournaments with mobile, there's been a lot of connection issues, delays. For a lot of these competition games, if the lag is just 0.1 or 0.2 slower, is a big advantage for somebody else. So I think that for esports in countries like Vietnam, although it's popular and people are watching a lot of it, for it to become profitable, like it is in like the U.S. and Korea, China, it will take some time, because the infrastructure has to catch up, and sponsors have to really start to believe that this is where sponsors have to apply to the HQ and tell them why they should be investing in these esports tournaments instead of traditional marketing, and that will take some time.
Great. These are very exciting trends to hear about from Vietnam. And with regards to changes, I'm also on the positive side because I actually took a quick look just now at the data from China because I believe a couple of years ago China went through a similar changes. So initially there was a slight dip in downloads for games, but this recovered quickly over time. Whereas for revenue, there was no impact at all, no negative impact at all. In fact, over the last 2 years, there's been steady growth in games revenue in China. And as for the game development scene, I think it's very strategic, like you mentioned, that a lot of young people are inspired by development, and that's something that you can also scale in Vietnam. It's also great to hear that they are picking sweet spots like hyper casual games and so on, because that's that's a big trend last year, and there's not that many. There's not as much not as much competition in that yet as compared to the hardcore games.
Yeah, it's hard to survive in hyper casual. Eventually, you have to move up the ladder under you're under heavy pressure, right, to keep buying traffic at low rates.
That's good to know. Great. So, to our last two questions. So, firstly, how should other gaming companies work with you and VNG?
Well, I think there's many different ways we can cooperate. So VNG here, I would say that working together as a public in our publishing model is a good start. So obviously, one, the traditional model for us has always been, obviously we'll publish your game in Vietnam, get a license for you, and also help you using our social platforms like Zalo and Zing the same way Tencent uses theirs to push the game and get strong user base in Vietnam. However, in the long term, we're definitely focused on publishing regionally in Southeast Asia and Taiwan, Hong Kong, and most of our deals now would be for the region. And the reason why is that we think that publishing is sort of a long-term model, right? People have always wondered, like, oh, can we just publish the games ourselves, right? Because we made it. But at the same time, we see more and more now that having a local publisher, especially in regions that you're not familiar with, companies like us and a lot of other local publishers, we've had 16 years of publishing experience, right? So that's something that you really like can see really great sort of results from, and that we actually did a research using App Annie, looking at games that had a publisher versus games that were self-published, right? And if even when you do the straight up comparison, actually games the publisher had a significantly larger user base and revenue. And if you take out like the really top games like say like PUBG, which is published by Tencent, or some of these other big games at all, especially for the mid-core and hardcore games, like the gap is extremely huge. So I would say that the best way to be working with VNG and other publishers in emerging markets, whether it be Southeast Asia, Latin America, or other places, would really be to have a strong communication understanding and be willing to adapt to what the local market and tastes are. Let the local publishers be the one to manage your Facebook pages and TikTok pages and your community events, right? Instead of just hiring a local speaker wherever you are and just doing it from there, because we often see that the results for the content and the interaction is very different. And nowadays, with how competitive CPI really is, you really need that strong community for your game to last longer, which brings back better ROI.
Are there specific types of games you're looking for?
Yeah, actually, we do almost every kind of game, as you said before, right? Because we're just a gaming company. So right now, we're looking for games that really are able to have a long life cycle, right? So we used to do a lot of, to be honest, we used to love instant noodle games, right? Where you quick come and quick return, and then you get out after 6 months, right? And move on to the next one, and use that traffic to bring on the next one. But that's not really good for your reputation and your brand. It's not really good for a long-term business model. It's very risky. So now we're all looking for games which are able to really manage and keep the users staying within the community. All the users, not just paying users, right, for a long period of time, and lighten the sort of short-term monetization to be able to make the game very long-term and sustainable.
You guys publish Mobile Legends in Vietnam. That must be one of the longest life cycle games, right?
Definitely. Mobile Legends has been a great long life cycle game. And of course, games like PUBG and now Wild Rift, right, are all great mobile in terms of life expectancy. But some of the things that we've noticed is that even for some of the RPGs and card battle games, right, for example, like Chinese Ghost Story, which was a big one, it's been like 5 or 6 years, and Legend of Swordsman, that's our biggest game as well. Now it's 6 or 7 years and still probably top 3 game in Vietnam. So it's great to see some of these hardcore games that are not session-based esports games able to actually have long life cycles as well. That's really encouraging. If you look at Genshin Impact and the way they do their monetization, you don't need to spend a cent to finish the game and even achieve, every single 100% achievements, right? But at the same time, people are spending, and that really gives you that freedom of choice. I think that's where the trend is going as well too. Not so much in your face monetization, but monetization that really gives you choice, and you'll find out that users are willing to pay when you give them choice. You don't have to force them as we did in the past, right?
That's great to know. Great. So on to our final question. So we would like you to pose a question to our next guest. Our next guest is Mr. Iwaki. Iwaki-san is the executive director at MindNet. He manages all business development functions for the company, including gaming business and other areas such as sports businesses. MindNet is known in Japan for creating the secondary market for free-to-play games. And they also focus on the longevity of each game and its community. And before MindNet, Mr. Iwaki was also a senior executive at Sega. So what would you like to ask him?
All right, so thank you. And luckily, I've gotten Iwaki-san's file information a little bit earlier. So I have 2 quick questions, one for each of his roles. So, in MindNet, as you said, he's managing a lot of the Japan's ecosystem as well. So I really want to ask, there's a lot of assumptions made about Japanese users and why there's a lot of games in, like Puzzles and Dragons or Monster Strike, which are very popular in Japan, but didn't get so much traction outside of Japan. So I really want to ask, what is, in your opinion, what are the unique qualities of Japanese users that make them really different from users across other parts of the world that we have to notice when we go to Japan? And secondly, seeing that he had an amazing long career at Sega, for a personal question, I really want to ask, what's the future for Sonic the Hedgehog? I remember being young and
Is that your favorite Sega character?
It's funny because I was a big Mario guy, right? And then like everybody else, when I saw how fast Sonic was running, and how fast the gameplay was, I became addicted. So I have a lot of great memories about it, but I haven't seen him for a while, so I hope he comes back. So I would be great if Iwaki-san has some insight on what he thinks can be done.
Great, those are two great questions. So thank you very much, Chris. We've come to the end of our session today. Thank you very much for all your sharing and insights, and we'll see everyone soon.
All right. Thanks, Junde, and thanks to the whole App Annie team. I want to wish everyone very happy 2021. I'm so glad it's here, and the best of health throughout the year. See you soon.